All right. Muted myself there. um, I am so happy to be here and to share some resources. I have been gathering just a bunch of different ways to bring computer science into any subject. For today's focus, I did include um, things that you can do using our platform for free to get you started. There are, of course, so many other ideas that you can do with computer science. I will have us visit a little Padlet to share any of your favorite cross-curricular activities to do with computer science. But before we kind of dive in and get started, just want to gauge the group on what grade levels you are teaching and what like subjects you're teaching. So if you're not a computer science teacher, like kind of throw in what grade or what subjects you are teaching. So if you could just drop in the chat just grade level and subjects. And then I'll be sure that we can dive into some of these activities that relate best to you. All right. We've got a little 6-8 focus, kind of an all focus. That's a very common theme right now. All right. So I'll kind of dabble into a little bit of everything then. For hands-on component, depending on time, I hope to dabble in a little bit of elementary and a little bit of secondary so you can get a feel for both of those. And we'll have resources for both. So I will begin sharing my screen here and just make sure I get the right thing up. So we should be seeing a cross-curricular computer science, yes? Okay, perfect. So we'll dive in here. We have a smaller group present, but we will take a little bit of time in case you have anything you'd like to share cross-curricular wise. But kicking us off, I am Jessica. I am a partnership manager for Skillstruck. I am in Wisconsin, so I am quite close to Illinois. So if you ever need any support, I am nearby and just willing to help. So a little bit of background on me. I was a previous innovation coach in an elementary school. So I taught K-5 computer science and creation. I helped manage our school library and I helped teachers integrate technology into the classroom and also did a lot of work with project-based learning. So kind of wore many hats in the education space in that K-5. I really, really loved the computer science component. I loved teaching the students computer science. I loved diving into that, which is what led me to join the Skillstruck team. I am here to help teachers tackle computer science, to help teachers and students be excited about computer science. I know with Illinois and other states too, there are a lot of looming mandates that could be a little bit overwhelming. So my main goal is to help teachers and to make this fun because it is so fun and it can be so engaging for students. So that is just really why I'm here today. I do have my contact information on here. I will be sharing these slides so IDEA can share all of the resources we go through today. Feel free to contact me anytime if you have questions about what you've learned today, if you have questions about needing help with an idea. Really, I would love to hear from you. Before we get started, I kind of shared this at my back to school webinar last week. I know it is back to school. I'm sure some of you I see in classrooms may have already started with students. These are my little 2 pieces of advice. If you haven't started school yet, never forget to take your back to school photo in the morning. This is a picture of my friend and I. We were all, cute, ready for the school year. Didn't take a picture all day until we went into the parking lot and we're the last ones there because my friend had a flat tire. So that is actually my husband changing the tire and a nice, kind citizen walking by to help. So you never know. So along with that, I know that you can handle anything that comes your way this year. Hopefully it is a good one. Hopefully it is on the positive end of things and we can continue to move forward with our students all together. So cross-curricular and computer science. First of all, I love to integrate computer science across the board because I definitely believe it is a way to engage students in the classroom. You might have students who don't do as well in certain subjects, but if you can bring in a technology piece, a computer science piece, you might just hook them and get them engaged into your classroom. If you'd like to share any other benefits in the chat that you see computer science being cross-curricular, feel free to throw in your thoughts here. So integrating computer science into your subject area could be overwhelming, but it doesn't have to be. And I've combined a bunch of quick ways to dive into computer science. Some of these are like really quick and easy, like, oh, I could just pick this up and do this. Some of them, when we get to like the 6-12 area, it might take a little bit more time. It might take a little bit more teaching of computer science skills, but with what I'm giving you today, you'll have the resources you need to give it a try. So we'll dive into those. I did create a cross-curricular computer science Padlet. I'll just make sure that IDEA, this is linked in here. I'll make sure IDEA kind of focuses on this too, because I know that there might be a greater group out there that will see this, that would like to share. And I was hoping to create like just a plethora of resources for you all to share in computer science and cross-curricular things that you do that maybe you could share with others. So I won't spend too much time on this today. I'll get into some of our content, but I'll make sure that the group knows to maybe use that as a space for you all to capture resources. So we'll dive in. This is free cross-curricular with Skillstruck. So I picked out all of we have free code playground links that I am going to provide you with today. One for Launchpad, which is our elementary platform, and one is Voyage, which is our secondary platform. Along with that, we also have a free for classroom account that teachers can use and enroll students. But today we're going to focus on these code playground links. And within these code playground links, I will be providing you with activities and challenges that can be done cross-curricular. I have broken this up into ELA, math, science, and SEL, and then I have some additional activities that can cover things like music, art, gym, and social studies. So we'll kind of go through all of these. And I know that there's a lot of content there, so within these slides, there is going to be an activity table of contents, and each will take you to the designated spot for you. So if you're more focused on elementary, you can easily navigate because there are a lot of slides here. So we'll see how much we can tackle. Kicking this off, for each subject area that is broken down by grade level, I'll provide you with some objectives, an unplugged activity, a platform activity, and then I do have some like little art connections throughout here. A lot of creation can just happen with paper and pencil before we get to coding. So that is the flow of how these resources will be presented to you. So I'll just go through. I won't read everything on these slides. You can kind of pick what relates best to you. But for this K2, a lot of the activities that I'll be showing you today for K2 will be ways that students can create within our flight training, and I'll give you a little peek at that. So kicking this off, this is just a retelling activity. So in really any K5 level, you can do a lot of computer science and ELA integration when it comes to retelling a story. and really relating that back to sequences and algorithms, which is a step-by-step set of instructions. So really great to do like a first, this happened, then this happened, finally, and so on. So this activity is basically grab a read aloud that reinforces algorithms, so reinforces a specific step-by-step instructions. We did throw in a couple ideas for you to use, and then going through a graphic organizer to have a student break apart those different parts of the book, and then using flight training to recreate that scene and that story. So I'll kind of show you what that looks like. All of the activity steps are broken down in here. So reading the story, graphic organizer, some ways that you can differentiate, and then just some specific things that students will add to their project. When we get into our K2, and this is the graphic organizer I have created, again, you could do this together individually. Maybe you have a graphic organizer that works better for you. But when we get into the flight training space, there are what are called scenes, and we use different block-based coding to create scenes. So it gives a little of a Scratch Junior feel if you've ever used that, but it is all housed within our platform. So kind of meets a lot of privacy and things like that. But through here, I also have linked in this slideshow printing off these blocks. So you'll see here there's some trigger blocks, movement blocks, and so on. There are printable ones, so you can print them off and have students organize their code like on their table before going in and accessing the flight training activities. That would be very, very helpful, especially at the kindergarten first, second, to really get them a little bit of unplugged, a little bit of practice before diving in. So I'll give you a feel for our flight training when we dabble into our Launchpad shortly. The ELA connection for grades 3 through 12. We're going to do this one together, actually, because this one's kind of fun. So be thinking about a quote, maybe your favorite quote. I won't make you do 3, but you can think of one. The objectives here are for students to identify powerful literary quotes. Or maybe you're like, okay, maybe they can pick a favorite quote by a historical figure or someone they look up to or something that makes them smile, whatever it may be. And what we'll do for this one, for Unplugged, they'll do a little quote research. I kind of recommend if you don't do too much with quotes, or you could do a little bit of poetry, but you could have like a bunch of resources around your classroom, maybe favorite novels, picture books, poems printed off from websites, quotes printed off, and like have them all over your room and have students pick their favorite. This is actually could also be a really good connection to getting to know your students at the beginning of the school year here. So doing some quote research, filling in a graphic organizer, and then getting into the platform and creating a quotes page with some HTML. So we're going to practice this. So we'll kind of go through these steps here. We'll just do a quick quote. So here's the graphic organizer for you to use. Again, if you have something different or you just want your kids to do one quote, that is totally fine. For this, there's going to be 2 different ways to tackle this. So this quotes activity is going to be available in our K-5 platform and our 6-12 platform. Just the logging in and the logistics of it are just a little different depending on this grade level. They will also need to know the basics of HTML, which will be provided in these slides. So I have all the slides out there for making this happen for this activity, but all of this information will also be available for a student to follow on their own. So I'm going to just skip through this HTML because I'll kind of walk you through that on our platform. So I'm going to share in the chat a link to access our Launchpad platform. From there, I'm going to just give you a peek into the flight training that I've spoken to, so it starts to click a little bit more as we go through. And we're going to do one activity together here with a quote, so you can get a feel for how you could possibly teach this in the classroom. So I'll provide you a link shortly. All you will need to do is enter first name, last name, email. We do not collect this data. This data does not go anywhere. If you are planning to use these Code Playground links with students and you would prefer them not to have to enter an email, please reach out to me and I'll get you a link without an email. And students could just enter their first initial and last initial too if you're worried about privacy. So just wanted to point that out. So when you get this link, first name, last name, email, and then I'm going to show you around. So I'm going to tap in the chat here. Make sure you have your link. So the link I will be sharing is going to be for Launchpad, and we'll get into the secondary one also. And these links will be provided to you in the slides as well. So if you lose the link today, it'll be sent to you for reference. I am going to reshare here. And please let me know if you need any help getting in to the link. All right, I'll just check the chat, see if anyone was having any issues. And if you're just following along, that's okay too. I just want to make sure that you know how to navigate and where to find everything and do a little bit of hands-on. So when logging into this Code Playground link, you are going to have access to a few different things. So you'll have access to our code puzzles and our HTML lessons in here. So it's kind of broken up into two parts. The first part will be sequences and algorithms. So just kind of what I said earlier with K2 and retelling, you can also connect that to algorithms, which you could kind of dive into our puzzles, which are our night puzzles, navigating our night to get to the red door. We're not going to focus as much on puzzles today as we will on some of the HTML. So that's one component will be algorithms and those night puzzles. The second is our HTML. So we begin introducing HTML in third grade, and you can kind of dabble in how that works here in the platform. So for the available lessons in this Code Playground link, you will have headers, paragraphs, text colors, fonts, and images. So it does get a little in depth and you will get some good content here that students can work through to get started with HTML. So everything that you saw on my slides will also be available student facing. So if they have never learned HTML before, they'll get a little feel for how headers work. If we click these try it boxes, they'll be able to see how it runs and so on. So all of that content is there. It will be read to them as well. So this is a lot of text. Maybe they need a little bit of help with that. Then within our checkpoints, this is where they'll do a quick practice of headers. And then these challenges are where we're going to dive in right now. So the challenges, there are multiple different ones to choose from. And we were just speaking to finding a quote. So what you'll do is you will scroll through to find paragraphs, quotes page, and we're going to give this a try. So hopefully you have a little quote at the top of your head. If not, there's some example quotes here that for today you could just use. What I'd like to point out is we provide students the ability to learn HTML in block-based or text-based format. So we'll kind of practice this to start with blocks. If you have advanced coders, they'd be able to change their profile into text typing if you'd like them to type out all of the code. So that is a differentiator for you that is available within this Code Playground link. So our requirements here are to have 3 paragraph tags, and to do a quote. So I'm just going to go over here, and this will work by clicking on blocks and then dragging and dropping the different text that you need. And what you'll see here, I don't know, this is the one that just came up for me. What you'll see here is the platform will translate this into text-based for them in the lower right corner. So they can do block-based, they can see the text, so as they progress, they can become a little bit more comfortable with that. The other thing that you will notice throughout some of the other free activities that I've put together for you today, I'm just gonna throw this away, is we have style block attributes. So students can drag and drop, and then they can change the color and the font of their text right in a block. So then they can see that run into text-based. If you have never, oh, that never really went and I trashed it. If you've never taught or used HTML before, this could be a great way for you to get started by dragging and dropping blocks and then seeing it translate to text. If I were to change it then to text, that would go away the blocks and you'd be able to see it strictly in text-based. So this activity is using those different blocks to create some paragraph tags. If you're like, oh, I don't really want to do a paragraph tag, I liked what you did with just changing the color, you can do that too, put your own spin on that. So that is how this section works with the quotes. The next thing that I'll point out before we go back to my presentation are the scenes. So scenes is where you will access the place where students can create their own little projects here. We have a playground available so students can kind of start from scratch. That is not currently available in this code playground link, but it is coming. So for now, for any time I mention flight training, any scene, you can really pick any of these to create our projects. And what students will do is they'll be able to go in and they'll be able, I already kind of did this one, but they'll be able to change their backgrounds and change their sprites and then do some of the block-based drag and drop coding, which kind of relates directly back to what I said with there are available printable blocks that you could print and have students decide what kind of code they would like to include in their projects. Any of these other challenges, a lot of these I mentioned throughout the cross-curricular connections. So this is where we'll go in the elementary space to make some of these connections with the different projects that I have available. Any questions on how this works, anything like that? All right, we'll jump back in to the cross-curricular ideas here. So those were some ELA connections with finding different literary quotes and putting them into HTML in our elementary space. I do have some examples in here for you. So if you need a little bit of help with what code you could write, you can copy mine. And then I have the same steps for block-based, so you can kind of get a feel for what that looks like. For me, instead of doing like those paragraph tags, I did do header tags with different styles because I thought it was a little bit more fun. And then in the secondary space, there is going to be a similar process, and I'll kind of provide you with a link to explore when we get to science. But basically, they'll go in They're going to click on text colors. They'll do a challenge, and these are all steps for them to log in. You can share this with students. They'll select colorful quotes, they'll make a new file, and they'll be able to do a colorful quotes example. The difference here at secondary is there's going to be a bit more lines of code. So this particular challenge requires 18 different header tags. So just a little differentiation, a little bit more on the students as they are secondary. So similar activity, just a little bit different when it comes to the coding part. So for math, math can be hard, but also easy to integrate into some of the cross-curricular computer science components here. What I came up with for math would be different shapes and getting students comfortable with different shapes. So for this activity, you can strictly focus on just a few to get started. This is probably a great time of year also to dabble into this, but doing a circle, square, triangle, doing a scavenger hunt around the classroom, like you can spread out all the different shapes, or you can just have them find what already exists in the classroom. And then for flight training, it would be creating a scene, which I'll show you, of different shapes. And then for each shape, you would have the amount of motion blocks per the amount of sides that a shape would have. So I'll kind of show you what that looks like. I have activity steps in here. So how to introduce this, how to talk about the different shapes, how to combine them with the idea of algorithms, which will get them moving through the flight training. And just kind of everything that you need to make this happen. Discussion points, things like that. The login instructions for here, again, are going to be in those scenes that I just showed earlier. You can pick any scene. But here's what you would do from there. So for each shape that you have, you will need a trigger block, and then you will need the amount of motion blocks per the amount of sides. And this is where that printable blocks will come into play as well. For a circle, I simply did a trigger block and then a turn block forever. So kind of speaking to, hey, how is a circle different from these other shapes? And then kind of ending that with an end block. So just a quick, easy way to do a little scavenger hunt, get them coding a little bit, and be a little bit creative with how they tackle that. And then these shapes are just available sprites in the scenes. For 3-5 math, there is a sequencing slides activity included in here that you can tie in sequences of numbers and algorithms and sequencing with coding. And for the platform activity, you will be just going through those night puzzles that I showed earlier. So there are some activity steps here with some talking pieces for you. And then this will be the whole sequencing activity slide. So finding the rule for the sequence, going through this, you can model the first one and then open it up to the group and have it be a whole class discussion. And then after finding this rule and going through each of these, you will then connect this to sequencing in coding and how an algorithm only works if the step-by-step, the sequence follows correctly. I have on here how you can introduce this. Again, this is available in the code editor, but this might be easier for you to conquer through a slide. So going through algorithms, coming up with some real world examples, and then tying this into a sequence, and then connecting those things together, and then allowing them some time to practice this on the platform by doing some coding with the night puzzles. And then you can wrap up by just making that connection again. So here will be your login instructions for this. Here you'll access the puzzles, and you can go through all the algorithms. I will say that there are more puzzles available than algorithms, so you can continue the practice with events and so on, depending on your students' level. And then for 6-12 math, so for 6-12 math and for 6-12 science, there are available lessons just right in the platform that you can direct your students and your teachers to. So for here, there's kind of 3 lessons into this. So this is a bit more robust. There's a lot more content here, but this is exploring some math through Python code. And I'll kind of let you experience what this will look like. But they'll explore variables, using variables, and then inputs and outputs. For this unplugged activity, I just highly suggest a note-taking strategy, whether that be them creating a coding journal or just taking some notes on the side, because there will be a lot of information here covered. And then within here, there are 3 platform activities available. So I'm going to keep going, but I'm going to drop the Voyage link, which is 612, and I'll show you what this looks like and the science when we get to that. Just for sake of time, I want to just keep moving so you know what's all here. So activity steps here for math, some login directions pointing you in the right direction. These are kind of what they will look like in the platform, which we'll peek at shortly. For science, for K2, I have a living and non-living kind of activity here. So unplugged would be going through an anchor chart and a graphic organizer to introduce what a living versus non-living organism is. A little art connection in there, doing a little drawing. Activity steps here, talking track, everything you need to get this started. And then when it comes to the platform, they will go in, they can do a little drawing or words on living versus non-living. And then they will go into the platform, they'll log in, they'll go to scenes, they'll pick any one. But what they'll do is they'll go to our sprites and they'll pick different sprites that represent living and non-living things. What you can do from there then is have trigger blocks, and you can movement blocks, and you can even have these little text box if you'd like to have them provide a little bit more information, like why is a human a living thing? Why is a lamp a not living thing? And you could have them fill that in. So this will be done through the different sprites, and then they can code each of the sprites. You can see this cake here was in the middle of spinning around. So that is just, again, a really fun, easy connection to get on the platform, get coding, get them some things in there, and connect that to some science. For 3-5, we have just different ways to protect the earth. So class discussion, graphic organizer will be available to you. And then in the platform, they'll go through, they'll do a little HTML with text colors, and they'll lay out in different colors, different ways they can save the earth. I have a whole Earth Day presentation. If you'd like that, please reach out. It's pretty fun. So I have some talking things in here for you. Creating class list. We've got some graphic organizers for them to come up with 6 different ways that they can protect the earth. They will need 6 because in the challenge, they have to create 6 different header tags, and they will not be able to submit if they don't. So encourage the 6. You'll log in, you'll go to challenges, text colors, and some rainbow tags. Again, I haven't gotten too deep into HTML with you all today, but there are code examples in here. So you can go play around. You can use my code to get started and help them along the way. If you do need help with HTML, if you've never taught it before, I do have recordings of me introducing HTML for teachers and teaching you how to teach it. So maybe I'll just link that in here too, just so you have that for your reference. You can do this in both block-based and text-based, and I will have both of those examples of code in there for you. For 612, this is going to be, again, a little bit more robust of a project. This actually gets into some CSS, but there are ways that you can just do this in HTML if you're not quite ready for that yet. But this project is already built, so students can go through all of their requirements and view what they need to do. It is a project about identifying what kinds of fruits, vegetables, and herbs that they can grow in a garden in the area that they live in. So it will take a little bit of research on just some different things to include and maybe they don't know much about this. This could also lead into like a project-based learning situation. If you're like, okay, now let's make this garden, which is a super cool connection when you can bring all of this together in different areas. But in the platform, they'll go into CSS project number 2, Let It Grow, and it's going to lay out like all of their requirements. So they'll be able to kind of go through this on their own, or they'll be able, you can lead this lesson by lesson. What I'll say about this is if you've never taught HTML, you'll need to do that first, and then get into CSS. But I do have some ideas in here for how you can make this work with just HTML. So I'm going to actually stop here, and I'm going to put in the next Code Playground link for you to experience what the 612 looks like and help you navigate through that. Same process, first name, last name, email. Again, reach out if you're like, I don't want an email in there for my students. I'm happy to help you with that. Information doesn't go anywhere. And I'll reshare and show you around. All right, so this is how mine looks. You probably just logged in and it probably looked a little bit different because you've probably never been in there before. But when you log in, you'll probably have to click code. So when you first get in here, you might have to click the little open, close, caret thing and click code. But how the platform is set up is they will learn all of their content on the left here, so they can open up each individual lesson to learn. We code in the middle, and then it will run on the right side. So this here is an example of my colorful quotes activity that I mentioned earlier that is offered in this secondary platform. If you're like, oh, this garden thing or this is a really cool science activity, but I don't have much time, you could instead say, okay, we're going to do text colors and fonts, just give what vegetable can grow, how, and so on. But when we get to the CSS, you'll be able to have students like really build a lot of a website. So just wanted to be sure to provide a more robust option for those who may be experienced. What you'll be able to do is you can create new folders and new files along the way. So all of the work will save, so ongoing practice, and students can download those too. So if I'm going to do a new file, make sure you have the right file type. This is important, especially when it comes to Python. I mentioned Python earlier for math, and I'll show you that too, to make sure that when you're creating Python, you create it in a Python file. I'll just save that so it's a little less confusing there. But the CSS, one, you'll have some introduction here to CSS. And then you'll have some projects available. So if there's other projects on here that you're like, oh, this culture would be super cool for my social studies, go for it. It's available to you. This specific science one I'm speaking to is this project number 2, Let It Grow. And what you'll see here is they're going to create a website, and it gives them all of their requirements. And some of these requirements are going to be with HTML, okay, because we're adding an external style sheet and all of that. So they'll kind of go in, they'll need header tags, they'll need a title tag. So you could almost look at this and say, okay, I know my students can handle creating headers. And so headers are just opening and closing tags, and I have resources for you there. And maybe they can do an unordered list and an image. So you can kind of look at these requirements and say, all right, let's do this, but let's do it with HTML because the CSS is another layer that we're not quite ready for. You can also just peek at the different projects available for HTML1, history website. Some of these things I have put in additional activities. And then HTML1 has tons of content there, all unlocked for you. So when you go through each of our lessons here, you'll go through, you can start the checkpoint, and a lot of these challenges are ways that you can go cross-curricular. So if at any time while you have access to your link, you want to explore different ways to go cross-curricular, I recommend going to these challenges and seeing what kinds of things you can tackle there. Just speaking to really quickly the Python. The Python that I mentioned earlier, there will be in here some Python math for you, and then the different projects. So there also is like a calculator that students can make and other math connections that you can do there as well. The ones I specifically spoke to will be in Cross-Curricular for Voyage, exploring math through code. So there's a variables, using variables, and inputs, outputs open for you. And then there are some conservation things open as well. So if you're like, oh, I'd rather do some animal tracking, those are some available lessons too. So all built out for you, all having the text there. It can be very student-centered and student-facing. They can kind of go off on their own, or you can lead that all together. So lots of cross-curricular just built in and available with these free links that you are seeing. All right, switching back. Got a little bit more. Actually, I got a lot bit more, but I'll just show you what we can get through, and you can look through the rest on your own and reach out if you need anything. SEL, I love adding SEL and computer science together. There are some K2 ideas in here for just kindness, getting them to act some things out, creating some scenes. I'm just going to go a little bit quickly here so you can kind of get an idea for everything that's available. 3.5, there's going to be a similar, like going through this and then creating a gratitude challenge. The gratitude challenge is listing 5 things that they are grateful for. It's a pretty quick one, just headers. So you don't have to do text cards, you don't have to get anything scary in there. And then for 6.12, creating a space for their ideal learning environment. So going through and just becoming comfortable with where I learn best and kind of creating that. So there's some code examples in there for you, login instructions. And then I have additional connections that can be made. So within the platform, again, these are just available challenges to you. There is a challenge in 3.5 based around traditions. In 6.12, there are some other connections with dinosaur tracks, Declaration of Independence, travel, and then there's also some different flags. So creating backgrounds and creating flags with HTML. That one's pretty cool, pretty fun, not too heavy content there. Art. So you can create a website about an artist, about an art concept, about mixing colors. Really, once students get a feel for HTML, like they can create a website about anything, which can really tie into any project going on in any class. Could really take things to the next level to show their learning. For music, we have a challenge in there with song lyrics. So if you just want students to be able to pick out their favorite song and put in some lyrics there. We also, not available in there, but you can really make a strong connection between loops in coding and like a chorus and things that happen in a song. So that's a good connection to make there. And then for 6.12, there's HTML as a language, and it's all about musical language. And then for gym, I have a lot of yoga resources. So I tossed those in here. This is actually a previous webinar that I did with IDEA, with SEL and computer science. So I linked that entire presentation there, and it'll kind of just take you through, make a copy, but there are ways that you can bring yoga into this, yoga poses, and then further from that, there's some more SEL connections that you can make. So if the SEL connections that you saw in the cross-curricular don't excite you, you could dabble into here. But this is all about connecting yoga to computer science. So that's a great connection there too. And then I just did a webinar with IDEA actually, with back to school coding activities. So I just linked that resource again too. I provided a bunch of different ways to kick off the year, get to know your students with computer science. So a lot of those are good ways to tie into SEL or just tie into your everyday classroom. So hopefully there are plenty of resources here for you to grab and dabble in. Again, if you have not taught HTML before, I'll make sure that you get a recording to my introduction to HTML. We also do host teacher-specific, school-specific events. So if you're like, oh, I would just like to learn, I'd be happy to set that up with you as well. So we're done a little bit early. I feel like I went really fast and showed you a lot of things. Hopefully something that you saw here you can use. If you're inspired but you're scared, please reach out to me and I will be happy to show you how to make this work. Happy to meet with you one-on-one and walk through how to make it all happen. So there's a table of contents in there. There's tons of resources packed in. If it's overwhelming and you're not quite sure where to start, again, just please reach out if you need any help at all. Any questions? All right. Well, thank you for all you do for students. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful start to the year. Please use me as a resource as you need. I'm happy to help you on your computer science journey. Enjoy an extra 11 minutes of your day.